It's time for another installment of The Basics, and on today's show, going back into the Star Trek CCG, I want to talk about how important it is to learn from a defeat. Losing a game can be the most important thing that can happen to you as well as your deck, so let me explain. Now, before I use my always venerable Federation deck to illustrate my points on today's show, let me just start by saying that a lot of players have a predisposition to get utterly frustrated and angered from a bitter or brutal loss, and it causes them to tear apart the whole deck without asking questions to themselves about the deck and planning a course of action. So I'm going to show you what I do after every brutal and bitter loss, no matter what deck I'm using. And the first thing I do is ask myself, was my loss due to a lack of points? This would make me look at the missions, their point totals, if I can maybe add higher point total missions, or tailor them more to the personnel in my deck to help me score those points after getting through the dilemmas that my opponent put underneath them. Which leads me to personnel. Did I have a varied amount of personnel with decent skills enough to get me through those missions and or dilemmas? Was it due to my personnel that I got held up in scoring those points? So I would look at that combined with the missions and maybe swap out personnel and tailor more personnel to the missions instead of vice versa. Were my dilemmas potent enough? So basically, did enough of my opponent's personnel or ships or whatever get stopped, killed, put in stasis, etc. by my dilemmas, or were they weak? Did the combinations not work? I would tear apart the dilemmas more than anything, because your opponent can't score points if he's busy dealing with these. Ships. Do I have the right ships in my deck? Do they work with the missions I'm trying to achieve? Did they fail? Did one of them get destroyed? There are so many questions you can ask about ships. One of the big losses I incurred with this deck forced me to put in and think differently and put the Defiant in because it has a cloaking device. That came in handy with a lot of issues I faced in subsequent games for a while. Just that one ship swap out can mean the difference of winning or losing. Power cards. Number one, was I able to get my power cards out? Number two, were they effective? Did my opponent nullify them? What power cards would I want to swap out in exchange for others? Now, by power cards, you know I'm meaning events and interrupts and some artifacts that are crucial to the game, cards like that. I tailor my power cards depending on the affiliation and the type of deck I'm building. For example, I've always said my Federation deck is a powerful smash deck, so I would use a lot of damaging event and interrupts and cards that can help me get my own enhancements out and better things. The side deck. Was the side deck effective? Are there any cards I can change in the side deck to help fix the outcome of the game in my favor? And by fix, I mean move the game along and help me to achieve dominance. I don't mean fix as in cheating, obviously. The side deck is an unstable element in the game. It can make or break you in some cases, and it's there to help you get cards out faster. But if you don't have the right cards in there to get out faster, whoops, that becomes a liability. Overall, these are some main questions you have to ask after the loss before you even come close to taking apart your deck. It might be a combination of a couple of these, it might be only one, it might be something simple, but you owe it to yourself to ask these questions before you rip apart that deck. Now, that being said, I can't speak for everyone in terms of losing, but in my case, especially in the early years I played the game, and even sometimes now, one of the main sticking points that contributes to my losses when they do happen is usually confined to dilemmas. I'm not dealing enough damage to my opponent, or my own choice of missions. I've refined my deck building to pretty much eliminate any other problem the deck might have, but it always comes down for me to dilemmas and missions. This is why those questions after a loss are important. Have a great day, everybody.